there is a transition underway now where Indian investors are beginning to appreciate risk capital like venture.
India's startup ecosystem is on a journey of unprecedented innovation and growth, and the rise of entrepreneurs from Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are shining examples of how inclusive growth can lead to sustainable development.
What is one thing that puts you off as an investor if you see that in a founder?
Sometimes entrepreneurs can do a lot of window dressing to provide data that is not false, but that suits their narrative.
In your life, आपने बहुत सारी scalable build to last institution बनाए. What are some 3 fundamental pieces that are required to build a build to last and a scalable business?
अगर आप प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हो, अगर वही बड़ी नहीं है, हाँ, तो बिजनेस बड़ा बन ही नहीं सकता.
अगर कोई यंग बच्चा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बना रहा है, कौन सी 2 एक्शनेबल स्टेप हैं जो उनको करने चाहिए टू बिल्ड कल्चर, एंड कौन सी ऐसी 2 चीजें हैं जो उनको बिल्कुल भी नहीं करनी चाहिए नॉट टू बिल्ड अ गुड कल्चर?
You have to partner with people who have very similar value system, because that part is non-negotiable. Entrepreneurial companies like to work with entrepreneurial companies.
Tell us some values which you believe are common between you and Nandan sir.
The fact that you can believe that one day you will be able to give an identity to every citizen in the country.
Greetings everyone. Today we have a very special guest in this series of Exploring Minds, Mr. Sanjeev Aggarwal, who is the co-founder of Daksh, India's first early BPO business, which he scaled to more than 20,000 employees. Later he started Helion Venture Capital, which is the most prominent name in the VC industry in the early stage investing, in 2006 with Mr. Ashish Gupta. He reviewed more than 6,000 deals over his time. And later he started a growth capital fund called Fundamentum VC with one and only Nandan Nilekani sir in 2017. And today we are at his office to pick his brain. Thank you so much, sir, for doing this. Really grateful.
Pleasure.
So walk us through your college days when you were 22. What were you thinking? What were you up to?
I would say pretty indisciplined, as would be the case with a 20-year-old, and quite carefree, very focused on sports. So I used to play professional table tennis, and very varied in terms of what kind of career I could pursue. Okay. Someday I would say I want to be a sports commentator. Other day I would say that I want to go to Merchant Navy because it takes you overseas. And someday I would think that I want to be a civil servant. And someday an entrepreneur. So I think I was quite a restless soul and very unclear about where I want to go in life. So that was the part of growing up.
And अपने कॉलेज में सबसे खतरनाक शैतानी कौन सी करी थी जो आपको अभी तक याद है?
तो मैं एक्चुअली बहुत डिसिप्लिन बच्चा था.
हाँ.
तो I think I was not that person who had this naughty side to me.
Got it. And what was your first job after your college?
So my first job actually was a venture that I started on my own.
In your college days?
After my college days. After I finished my engineering, I helped start a company called Computer Data Center.
This is which year?
This is 1981.
हाँ.
तो उन दिनों में कंप्यूटर की शुरुआत हुई थी. तो हमने सोचा कि we will do data processing by using hired computers, and we will do training in programming languages. So we started this business called Computer Data Center with a friend of mine called Rajiv Kataria. And that was my first brush. So I realize now that there was an entrepreneurial streak even then. And then my father said कि ये बेटा ये respectable चीज़ नहीं है entrepreneurship वगैरह, तुम नौकरी लो और अच्छी जगह पे काम करो. So I finished my education and then I started life at DCM as a management trainee, who used to have a very good program in those days back in 80s that will give you cross-functional understanding of various functional areas to develop you as a general manager. So that was and I was posted in Kota in Siddharam Fertilizers and Chemicals.
Got it.
Yeah. And I learned from the grassroots, sitting in the warehouse, getting fertilizers packed and dispatched. That seems to be my first recollection of what I did.
And you are currently an employee during that time.
Yeah.
You're working as a management trainee.
Yeah.
What did you learn there? What were certain points where you had a huge learning curve?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're scolded by your boss. Sometimes you make a blunder.
Yeah.
What were certain things that you did?
I remember our executive director, Mr. M.L. Seth. When he would come to Kota, he used to live in Delhi. I was assigned the duty of escorting him around. So one day he asked me कि बेटा आजकल गेहूं का क्या भाव है? So I realized how narrow my worldview was when I was totally stumped by that question. So I think one of the things that working with good leaders and working with good organizations is that they really expand your horizon and your worldview. And second thing I learned in DCM was cross-functional understanding, because I was posted in different parts of the organization as a management trainee. So it gave me a very good holistic understanding how a business runs, from acquiring a customer to making the product to dispatching it to collecting money, automating the entire workflow. So as a 22-year-old or a 24-year-old, I was already thinking like a CEO. Which was, I think, a tremendous blessing, because a typical job is that you are given a particular function or a silo, and you basically go deep in that. But their model was different. They said that as a management trainee, you are our future general manager. So we will take you around all aspects of the organization. And then you go and run some part. But you must have a holistic view of the organization. So I think my general management skills, though I didn't stay there for long, were really honed in that setting.
That was the second stint, and we want to go towards the story of building Daksh. What was the starting point? And उससे पहले क्या हुआ था? What made you start Daksh? Through that point till 2000s.
Yeah. So as I told you, I always had an entrepreneurial itch, which showed up in my post-college days that we talked about. And I was actually working in multiple companies, which is a long story, but to cut it short, I always realized that I was either interested in a turnaround or starting something within a company. But I came from a very middle-class background, so I didn't have the capital to build a company.
Right.
What happened in 2000 was confluence of a few things. One, the venture capital world had started to come into India. So one thought that even if one did not have capital, one can get access to that capital. Second thing that was happening was that there was explosion of internet, and large companies like Amazon and Yahoo were getting a lot of inquiries from their customers that they were not able to fulfill. So the customer experience on the internet while shopping or post-shopping experience was not very good. And we thought that can India's talent help improve that experience? And third, very interesting proof point was that GE had already established a back office.
Right. Pramod sir.
Under the leadership of Pramod. तो उससे ये establish हो गया था that the process can be moved from one part of the world
to another.
In
like a country like India.
To a country like India. So we said we will apply this concept of remote delivery to business process outsourcing. And the first process we picked was email-based customer service for Amazon.com. So, and then the rest is history. Because once we got Amazon and we were able to deliver a very good season, as you may know, in the fourth quarter, they get a lot of customer queries because that's the peak season for purchasing. So Amazon wanted us to ramp up our ability to handle the consumer inbound requests 3-4 times on a very, very short notice. And we were so fortunate that we are in a country where we have access to such high quality talent that we were able to ramp up on a very short notice. And Amazon delivered a great season. And I think that kind of built a credibility that not only do you get very good quality talent, you also get talent at a very large scale, which can come to your rescue in unpredictable times of strong purchasing season.
But walk me through the first, how did you convince a giant like Amazon? Is it because of Ashish sir? Because Jungli was acquired by, then how did you convince your first client? How did you figure out कि ना Amazon को ये problem है? Did you meet Pramod sir? How did you understand कि यार Genpact की revolution कर रहा है? Because that was for captive,
it was in a captive set.
And you kind of, changed that to an captive. So how did the learning happen? How did
So actually, Ashish, who's my brother-in-law.
Okay.
My Ashish's sister is married to me. You are absolutely right. He had inspired me after doing Jungli. And he introduced me to my co-founder, Pawan Vash. Pawan and Ashish were at Stanford together. And Pawan came back to India to run his proprietary business. So two of us actually were brainstorming
कि क्या करना है,
कि करना क्या है. And then we said कि ये इंटरनेट पे काफी explosion हो रहा है.
We'll write this.
And we will write this. And fortunately, email is a asynchronous communication, unlike voice where you have to
be at that particular time. Both the parties.
Yes. Email, you can have some lag. So even if India's telecommunication
is behind, we can still kind of make it
work because it's an email. It's not a voice call.
ठीक है.
So, तो हमने 6 महीने, that time I was working at Motorola, and during my non-office hours, Pawan and I would be doing research, punching away our presentation on the laptop. And my wife believed that this is all fantasy, nothing is going to come out of it. So she indulged us, she would feed us, and we will spend hours planning this. And then we said that we want to make Amazon, Yahoo, and eBay as our customers. Because those were the 3 greats of internet industry. And that is where I believe that if you can visualize something, your chances of making it happen
increases,
go up very, very significantly. So then we said, how do we now get access to these giants? Because all we had was a PowerPoint, and Pawan had one old Toshiba laptop, which we still have as a memoir. And we went to a company called Big Step, which was a small business portal. And we said that we want to run your customer service from India. And we talked about our credentials, that Pawan is from Stanford and I have run multiple large businesses in the country for other corporations. So try us out. So we got a chance to work with them with about 10 people project. And the results of that were very, very good. Now we said that we have to now go after the giants.
And before that, what was the exact value proposition you were offering to?
Exact proposition we were offering was that they were helping set up sites for small businesses.
So, in India?
No, globally. But we would provide all the assistance in terms of putting that site on the internet. So that is what we were doing. So basically remote work. Their customers were in US and we were providing all the assistance from India. And then we said that we have to take a leap here. And we read a book on customer service.
Which was?
Which I have forgotten the name. And what we learned was what I was telling you earlier, that a lot of shopping carts were getting abandoned and these internet retailers were going through an explosive growth, but very poor customer satisfaction. And as you said, Ashish had at that point in time sold Jungli to Amazon. Yeah. So through him, we got connected to the VP of customer service, gentleman called Bill Price. And Amazon that time used to run all its customer service in-house, not even outsourced in the US.
Got it.
So we went to Bill and we said that India has great talent and we are already servicing one customer and try us out.
And the cost arbitrage.
And the cost arbitrage and the fact that we can help you handle spikes, which you get in fourth quarter, October, November, December. So that, and Bill was a very entrepreneurial person himself. So otherwise a normal person would fear taking such a large step. He was able to convince his organization that these people will help us take our customer service to the next level. And their strength is that they have no legacy. A lot of people would come to Amazon and say that we will run your customer service, but they would say that we will run it our way. We said,
we'll run it your way.
We'll run it your way. So whatever best practices you have, whatever email technology platforms you have, we will use that, but we will put some very high quality talent in responding to your customer requests. So they then ran an RFP.
And what is an RFP?
A request for purchase, which means that you evaluate 6-7 companies. And it was a global RFP. And given that we were so obsessed on getting Amazon as a customer, we had done so much research on Amazon. We had heard all their investor calls to shareholders. Our pitch was received as the best. And there were many more mature companies from Philippines, from US that were also competing in this RFP. And our entrepreneurial and no legacy worked to our advantage. We said that think of us as Amazon. For a period of time, we will only work on your project. So we are like a captive for you, like GE has a captive in India. And we will adopt all your best practices and we will provide you access to high quality talent in the country. So that process went on for 6-7 months. They evaluated competing bids and eventually they said that you guys give us the most comfort. And the other thing is that entrepreneurial companies like to work with entrepreneurial companies because Amazon was also growing very rapidly. It was, if it was, let's say, a Citibank, at that point in time in our history, they wouldn't have bet on us. Right. So one of my learnings has been that in the start of building a company, you want to approach customers who are entrepreneurial. And through the ecosystem, you can get to know. So in those days, Dell was, for example, a very entrepreneurial company. Amazon was a very entrepreneurial company. So I think where you invest your energy in terms of customer acquisition becomes very, very important. Because if you start knocking doors of
people,
Fortune 500
or banks
who have very high standards of security and risk and compliance, then that time would be a waste. And in the world of venture financing, time is money. Because if the time runs out, your money runs out, and so we were able to actually make a very good strategic choice in going after the internet world. Because internet world was by and large run by entrepreneurs.
and innovative, and they're ready to take risks.
Yeah, and they were open to taking risks, and we were then able to convert that risk into a reality and delivered very good metrics, and we became a hero in the Amazon system.
But before coming to the Daksh story, tell us, ye peak क्यों आता है Q4 में, October, November?
Because
what's the reason behind this?
Season, Christmas and
New Year and everything.
Yeah, so people do a lot of gifting.
So इसकी वजह से got it.
So that is the reason of the peak.
Walk us through the journey of scaling Daksh from Amazon, 20,000 employees, and eventually selling it to IBM for not of 750 crores. What was the story? What was the inflection point? What was the hardest decisions?
Once we were able to get Amazon as our customer, we realized that we have hit a jackpot. Because Amazon, though a young company, was known for its customer experience. So somebody who has set benchmarks of customer experience, giving work to us, and then we converting that work into best-in-class output, gave us huge validation. And then we said, now let us take this messaging to the big corporations. So we went to Sprint, Citibank, Hewlett-Packard. All these people became our customers, because there are a lot of people who follow, but there are very few who are willing to pioneer. So once Amazon had made this move, people were watching them, and they said, if the best in customer service
is doing this,
why not us? And then we realized we had a reverse problem.
Which was
that we had too much demand. How do we now cater to that demand? So we were adding some 10 people per day. So that was actually backbreaking. And then I think an inflection point came in our lives when I went and met Mr. Suta. I don't know if you know Mr. Ashok Suta.
No.
He runs Happiest Minds.
Okay, yes.
And prior to that, he used to run MakeMyTrip. And prior to that, he was a Wipro. So he was an industry doyen. And I told him, sir, that this is my problem. I am a young company. I have very few resources. And I don't know how to scale this. I had never run more than 100 people organization in my prior life. And here we are dealing with thousands of people. And I said, this is my blueprint, that why don't we break the company into multiple business units and then put a CEO
to each of the
business units so that they can carve out their own destiny. That, to my mind, was the inflection point that you were talking of, where we had 6-7 business units, each having a CEO and each one growing there.
Give us an example of a particular function. What were the functions?
So all the functions were within the business unit, but they were organized by industries. So we said one will be e-commerce vertical, other would be technology vertical, third would be telecom vertical. So all the customers from these categories were reside in these verticals, and these verticals were run by CEOs. So rather than one company being run by us as a management team, we now had many companies inside Daksh.
Right. And many energy, many powers,
many energies. So it became a very decentralized organization. And there was no centralized, other than review process and good governance that was being done centrally. We were able to unleash the entrepreneurial energy of people. And we became a 20,000 people company in 6 years, and all that good things happen. And I think, so that was one, restructuring from a functional area to a business unit. And the other thing was we were maniacal about customer experience. Our objective was that we will beat the customer experience that you are delivering to your customers currently. And mind you, these were all Fortune 500. Hewlett Packard, Citibank, Aetna, Amazon, Yahoo, eBay. So it couldn't get, the roster couldn't get better than this. Then actually there is one force that hit us, which is that people like Accenture and IBM started to offer what is called business transformation solution. They said that we will combine consulting, technology, and processing. And we will give you an integrated solution. So if you are Sprint and you say, I am 4th in my customer service, we will take your entire customer service department, end to end. Technology, advice, people, process, the whole execution. And we realized that we were not capable of getting into that end-to-end role. So we then chose to partner with IBM because IBM already had consulting and technology. And they found that we were very good at managing business processes. So they were then able to integrate the entire story and take it to their customers, which was a very big success. And that was our acquisition by IBM.
Got it. And how is the negotiation of doing this and post acquiring? What's the life? You get to work with them for some time.
Yeah.
How did the transition happen?
Yeah.
Also, before touching this, I want to understand, you're a big believer of culture and stuff.
Yeah.
So while this inflection point, while you were getting functional heads, hiring young leaders, how did you ensure that the right transfer of culture from the bigger organization is, going through the veins of these smaller? How did you ensure that? How did you figure out leaders? And what were some dilemmas? What were some learnings from that?
I think that's a brilliant question. And one, I think we had created 7 values very early in our life. And some of them were managing by facts and data, living by customer. So we co-created these values. And then when we hired leaders, we make sure that they were hired against these values. And they were appraised against these values.
And how do you do that? How do you measure that if you're hiring someone, he lives by the customer?
Yeah. So you actually go to his past history. You speak to his referees and you get that information. And when he is inside your organization, you do a lot of 360-degree checks from superiors, subordinates, juniors, as to, does this leader stand out? You ask your customers that he serves, that Mr. Customer, what do you think of this Daksh business unit leader who is servicing you? So you have a 360-degree view of that person around the key values that you think will make you propel into a big leader. And then you do tremendous amount of employee communication. So you make heroes. So we would, for example, have annual function and we would reward people who were rated as the best business unit, best customer service specialist. So we would make examples of people who were excelling in those values. And that is how it percolated. And second thing we did was huge amount of empowerment. We said that we are an entrepreneurial company. So every person on the ground has to take charge of his work. And we will measure very effectively, but we will give you all the tools to do your job. And I realized that in India, people crave for empowerment. Everybody, if you leave him alone, and if you give him the tools, wants to express himself.
Right.
So I think we let people express themselves. And that created a great culture. We were rated as best employer in the BPO industry many times over. And I think customer centricity, managing by facts and data, empowerment, very entrepreneurial culture, very rigorous processes in terms of hiring and performance management. So that kind of created the flywheel where we became a very strong, referenceable organization.
Also, when you're saying, you were so customer-centric that your bars were serving the Fortune 500.
Yes.
Tell me, what were certain things that you were doing that made you truly customer-centric? Give us some ground-level examples.
Yeah. So I think now you are trying to invoke my memory of 20 years back. But what did we... So, for example, we would study customers' culture. We would study customers' best practices. We would tell our teams that you not only work for Daksh, but you also work for the customer. We would highlight those employees who are delivering best-in-class metrics. So, for example, for customer service, one of the metric is first-time resolution. That when a customer sends you an email asking a question, are you able to anticipate his next question and provide that in your answer
to your first question?
Yeah, which is called first contact resolution. So he didn't have to write to you again. So it's not only about responding to his immediate question, but reading that what could be a question after question. So those are the kind of practices that we induced in our people through a very strong training and quality organization.
Got it.
But more than that, I think it was making heroes of people who were the benchmarks on customer service. So I think it was a very tight coupling that we had with our customers, where customers thought that Daksh business unit is really my entity in India. It felt very seamless to them. While there are no headaches of managing that entity, so I get best of both the worlds. I get my culture, I get my team, which is captive to me. So we created this concept of insourcing, that you are not outsourcing. You are taking us inside your organization.
I see.
Yeah.
How was the post-exit life, sir?
Post-exit life was actually moving from a sprawling building to a small business center in Regis. The room was 1/5 of this size because I had immediately started Helion along with Ashish, Kamal and Rahul. So I finished day one in Daksh, and at day two we were at Helion. Yeah. And then the world changed, because now from being in execution, it was all about judgment, decision making in terms of whom to back. So very different rhythm. But the good part was that I had developed some instinct building Daksh into a scalable institution as to what kind of people would make interesting entrepreneurs. And what will it take to scale companies? So I realized that these were the two strengths that I had developed during my professional career, ending with Daksh. And then I partnered with my colleagues who had investing background in their prior life. And that's how Helion was born. Yeah.
So you mentioned you developed instincts to understand what kind of people will make great businesses.
Yes.
And what will it take for a business to scale.
Yeah.
Give us the answers to these questions with the context of your first investment at Helion.
Yeah. Our first investment at Helion was MakeMyTrip. And that went on to go public. And I think what kind of people succeed, our view was people who are first principles thinkers, who break down the problem in a very, very logical way, who think by the situation and not by their past experience.
Give us an example. What did Rajesh sir and Deep sir pitch you, which made you convinced, these are first principle thinkers?
Yeah, so these guys, in the way they were making a pivot from earlier servicing global customers to now servicing domestic market, because they said that internet is coming to the country and companies like Expedia and all have done it successfully abroad. So we will be able to ride this wave of online travel within the country. The completeness of the team, that was very clear between Rajesh, some of his other co-founders. The kind of culture they were building was very, very collegial.
Right.
So I think all these elements go into building a scale company, which we thought that they had put in place. Thinking very logically, thinking from first principles, building a complete organization where there is all presence of all functional areas, and building a very collegial culture. And we also found that Deep was a very entrepreneurial executive. He had worked in GE, then he had done this bowling venture. He brought, I think, AMF bowling to India. So he was an entrepreneur who was waiting to be unleashed, because in his prior life he had demonstrated
these initiatives.
It's just that now he was applying to his own
company.
To his own company.
So you're a big proponent of first principle thinkers, sir.
Yes.
Give us an example of first principle thinking which you have done in your life, or which you have recently seen someone doing that.
Yeah.
So that we understand how do founders think with first principles?
How do founders think with first principles? I think exclusions are that they don't bring any baggage. Because entrepreneurial journey is journey less traveled. And you really don't know what's coming next. So if you go by prior experience, then that can be a very big handicap. So a good example would be Neeraj of Spinny. So he was the 10th entrant in used car platform.
Right.
And now he's become a leader. All of it in 3-4 years. And used cars were done as a listing platform. So you really didn't know how to validate the quality of the car. And he coined a full stack offering where he would say that I will buy a car, I will refurbish the car, and I will sell the car to you. So I will vouch for the quality of the car rather than just being a broker, a marketplace. So that is an example of first principles thinking, that he was not thinking like the other 9 companies which were creating marketplaces for a connection. So I think that is an example of first principles thinking, that you think according to the problems of the country and you don't replicate something which exists overseas. Take our example in BigBasket, for example. That time, all the money piled up with grofers because they were a marketplace model. They would pick from a
local nearby store and then deliver it
to the consumer. And that in India, because there is no technological integration with these small stores, what is there in that store, that information itself is not very current. So we said that we will not back grofers and we will back BigBasket, because BigBasket is building their warehouses, stocking, and can vouch for customer experience. What is called a full stack business model, whether Neeraj is following in Spinny or BigBasket is following with
Hari sir is following in
grocery. So that is another example of first principles thinking, that you don't do lift and shift of an idea from US and apply it to India. You think
ground up.
I guess that clears up, right? Yeah. So that is what I look for. So people should be very original thinkers.
So Helion, it was all about early stage backing.
Yes.
And then, and then Fundamentum is all about growth capital and stuff. What's the difference between these two things?
Difference is that one is about finding a product market fit. That you have a product, you will iterate that product and you will make the connection with the market. While in growth stage, it is all about scaling and institution building.
After PMF
is established. So now in Fundamentum, we come post PMF. We said that with backgrounds of Mr. Nilekani, who has built Infosys into such a large scale organization, we can actually be very helpful to an entrepreneur. Not in finding the product market fit. We feel that is best done by the entrepreneur himself, because he knows his business better than we do. But when it comes to scaling, when it comes to things like culture, recruiting top talent, organization design, these are the areas where we can be of help. And so I think from company to an institution, that transition from founder to a CEO, how a founder thinks and how a CEO thinks is different. Founder is about creation. CEO is about institutionalization of
right. We'll come to your partnership with Nandan sir and Fundamentum, but Helion में आपने गजब की investment करी, MakeMyTrip, BigBasket. Tell us one thesis that you betted on but that did not work.
There was a time when we thought that we can invest in non-tech businesses. And because we started as a tech VC, investing in companies like MakeMyTrip, which was selling plane tickets online. And we invested in a lot of non-tech businesses. And we realized that came in a cropper, because non-tech businesses are not easy to scale. And venture returns are all about disproportionate scaling in a very, very short period of time. So our entire non-tech investing did not pay us good dividends. And that is where we realized that you have to stick to your DNA. We were all tech-oriented people. So we should stay within our competencies and not get distracted, because even within tech, there is such a vast world that there is enough opportunity. So why stray from your original course? So I think that would be an example of a failed thesis.
Helion is such a big name, sir.
Yeah.
And, investing in so many startups.
Yes.
What was your personal, from hindsight, if you look?
Yeah.
If you have to tell us one learning.
Yeah.
And not about investing, not about, other things, but about people.
Yeah.
Venture capital, Helion, you invested in a lot of young founders. You invested in a lot of, you were handling so many partners.
Yeah.
From hindsight, what was the biggest learning that you learned from Helion, from your time at Helion?
Yeah.
About people and about things in life.
Yeah.
If you have to tell a 20-year-old कि यार ये चीज करना चाहिए या ये चीज नहीं करनी चाहिए, what that would be?
I think one is that which we got right at Helion and at Fundamentum is that you have to partner with people who have very similar value systems. Because that part is non-negotiable. These partnerships are so driven by values and by a few set of people. See, unlike a company like Daksh, where you have thousands of people, in a typical venture firm, there are 5, 10, 15 people. So each one becomes very critical to your success.
Right.
So the key man dependency is very high. In an organization like Daksh, if you lose a person, you can always
get more people from inside or outside.
Yeah, exactly. It is very hard to do that in the investing world, because I am a firm believer that we will like to develop people ground up, which means that we will not hire people who have done investing in their prior life.
And they have some baggage.
And they have a lot of baggage. So that was my philosophy in Daksh also, that we will not hire anybody from BPO. All our top management executives
will be fresh from
different industries. So they can do first principles thinking, my favorite phrase. Yeah. So same thing is with investing. So we have basically worked with people here who have no background in investing, and we invest in them to help them understand investing. But where we look for alignment is that we should have a shared value system and a very long-term horizon. Because building a firm is a multi-decadal activity. Because अगर आप किसी कंपनी में इन्वेस्ट करते हो, उसको 10 साल लगते हैं
कुछ बड़ा
करने के लिए. In India, it takes 10 years to build $1 billion business. Period. So if you are not willing to go through that cycle of identifying, investing, developing, exiting, then you can't say whether you are a good investor or not. So 20 years, I feel, is the minimum horizon for you to know whether you are a good investor or not. So I still feel that I am still going through my apprenticeship, though I started in 2006. Because one is the company building, and then two is different business cycles. So at some time it is enterprise software, at some time it is consumer internet, now it is AI and clean tech. So how well do you adapt to these changing industry trends? That cycle is also 7, 8, 10 years. Maybe internet was 2000 to 2020, and then we can say that next era could be AI and
climate
tech and things like that. So your ability to adapt to different industries and your ability to take a company through its maturity is a very, very long-term process where the feedback comes
later after 10 years.
After 10 years. Or beech mein it goes through so much of peaks and troughs. I believe that every company goes through a near-death experience. So how do you navigate that near-death experience?
Were there any near-death experience in Daksh? Oh, yeah. What were those? How did you navigate through it?
The fact that if we were not going to be able to convert the project into delivery within a certain period of time, then those contracts would be pulled back. So our answer was this business unit structure where we could grow very, very rapidly, because these Fortune 500 have very demanding timelines. So if we had missed any of these big customers, because we had only 10 customers maybe in all, then that would have been a near-death experience.
Kabhi aapne miss kari koi?
Fortunately not. Matlab, materially we didn't. We were able to deliver
at that.
Yeah. We were able to deliver that because of our empowered, decentralized, entrepreneurial model.
आपने बताया सर वैल्यूज का मिलना, and especially in firms where key dependency बहुत ज्यादा है. Let's say कोई young आदमी एक venture capital firm बना रहे हैं. How can he or she understand और जिन लोगों से partner कर रहा है उनकी values will stay same and will match, will be similar in, let's say, for 10 years or 20 years of working together. Because जब हम जुड़ते हैं तब हम ये नहीं सोचते, तब हम we are so passionate कि यार अब कुछ मिलके बड़ा करेंगे. Later you get to know कि यार our values fundamentally don't each other and we have to see our own ways. How can a young person know कि यार this partnership will work?
I think that's a great question. Pawan and I think we dated for almost a year, trying to formulate our thinking. And during that dating period, you get to know a lot. Or Ashish, Kamal, Rahul and I, we spent a lot of time around the table in helping conceive Helion. Or Nandan and I spent more than a year thinking through Fundamentum. So the best thing to do is to brainstorm the business idea with your potential partners. And then see that, do you have harmony? Do you finish each other's sentences? Do you have those kind of
alignment?
So spend a lot of time in dating, spend a lot of time in working on actual business problem that you are going to solve in terms of conceptualizing it, visualizing it, thinking of architecture, service offering, market, people. So I think that gives you very good insight into each other.
So this is the third part of the show, which where we want to double click, because it's the recent one. You're talking about dating your potential partners and stuff. Tell us, how did you meet Nandan sir for the very first time? And how did you date him while conceptualizing Fundamental? Also tell us your journey of conceptualizing Fundamental.
So actually it's very interesting. When we started Helion, we did a conference for our investors who were all endowments from large universities in the US. And Nandan was the keynote speaker. Little would I know that I will end up partnering with Nandan. But what happened was that in Helion, I was doing a lot of these growth stage deals, like MakeMyTrip, BigBasket, Axtria. So I realized that my expertise lies more in growth investing rather than early. A lot of my other colleagues were very proficient at early. So I thought that, can I make growth my
niche?
On the other hand, Nandan had come back from the government and he had started to invest personally without any organization or an institution. And we both realize that Indian entrepreneurs are very good at starting up, but they need help in scaling up.
So 0 to 1 सब कर लेते,
लेकिन 1 to 10 वाला जो है,
and 10 to 100 वाला
वो उसमें we can be a valuable ally. So we were independently, we reached these conclusions. And then, since we knew each other, Daksh was a small competitor to Infosys, so we were aware of each other, and he had spoken at our platform. And I used to, we in fact did a deal at Helion with Nandan in his personal capacity called Rail Yatri.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So we had some touch points. So I think we said that this is where we will make our mark. Nandan will give up his personal investing, and we will both help create a growth investing platform. So we believe we are the first homegrown growth investing platform. Like Helion was the first VC platform, homegrown. And Daksh was a homegrown business outsourcer.
When we talk about homegrown things, sir,
Yeah.
so I was reading this chart where jitna bhi value creation ho raha hai India mein,
Yeah.
ultimate beneficiary are the people sitting in the states,
Yeah.
the endowment funds that are actually giving money to this, and very less domestic capital nowadays.
Yeah.
After so many secondaries and stuff, Indian people are putting their own money, and a lot of family offices also.
Yeah.
But how do you think, how is it changing, and does it matter the nature of domestic capital from people investing from the capital?
It's a very interesting question, and eventually I think Indian problems should be solved by Indian capital. And in Fundamentum, we have put a lot of emphasis on raising Indian capital from entrepreneurs. So not only they bring capital, they are also able to bring valuable inputs into building the firm and helping the portfolio company. So there is a transition underway now where Indian investors are beginning to appreciate risk capital like venture, because venture is a new asset class in the country. In US, one of the first venture firms was Sutter Hill Ventures that came in 1960s. So that asset class there is 60 years old. So there is familiarity with that. In India, I think we are getting there. So as the asset class matures and as the asset class puts runs on the board, which means returns,
it will attract eyeballs and understanding.
Yeah. So a lot of even retail investors someday will have the ability to access venture capital type of programs.
Tell me a story.
Yeah.
About, please Fundamentum ki partnership mein, what was the biggest bet that you took out? I know that you have doubled down on a lot of ventures that you have invested on. Tell us some interesting story of a founder of a company that you have helped at Fundamentum and you believe this will go on for a bigger thing.
Yeah.
So through this question, we want to understand when a company raises certain things from Fundamentum, what are some value additions that you do apart from the, we want to understand how do you help them with the growth stage thing, whether it's organization design and other stuff, apart from the capital stuff. We want to learn from your experience.
Yeah, I think two companies that we probably have worked for the longest, one would be Spinny and other would be Pharmacy. And interventions there are, one would be advisory, that founders are very lonely. By the very nature of what they are doing, there are many things that they can't talk to many people about.
Like, what are those things?
Things about if they are having interpersonal challenges with one of the founders. They can't talk to too many people about that. So do you make a separation? Do you change the
organization structure?
So there are so many ways to play that. So one place where we can be an ally is become a sounding board. And sounding board comes in many areas. One area is really on the team building. How should you think of what functions to have in your organization? Should you have corporate development in your organization very early on in your life, or should it come later? how should you think about organic versus inorganic growth? What parts you do organically, what parts you do inorganically? What we were discussing earlier, how do you create a customer-centric culture? How do you measure NPS, embed that in your performance management? So I think these are, so I would put them in the bucket of organization, growth, new lines of business, culture. These are some of the things that we discuss with entrepreneurs, and our entire team, our CFO, our advisors, Nandan, myself. So we all actually provide this input to entrepreneurs at different frequencies. One subject where our CFO does a lot of work is on governance. How to think about putting an audit in place, having regular MIS. Because entrepreneurs per se are very driven towards growth. So when you are driving growth, you can sometimes ignore efficiency and foundation. Right. So how to bring their attention to efficiency so that the growth is profitable, and how do you put the right foundation in terms of compliance, process, technology, so that your growth is sustainable. These are the kind of things that our different colleagues in Fundamentum are able to
And
provide.
what was your thesis for investing in pharmacy? What made you double down on?
It's very, very similar to what we did in BigBasket or Spinny. That we wanted to pick the best team there was in the industry in a full stack model. Full stack means that they
End to end.
They source, keep inventory, deliver, collect cash, the entire cycle. So we found that Siddharth was one of the finest entrepreneurs in the space. And again, my favorite
First principle
thinker, and very, very strategic. And we thought that there were 3-4 people who were about the same
Netmeds
and 1M. They were at the same scale. And they are also very good companies. They've gone on to do a very good job. But we picked Siddharth because we thought that he was probably the finest CEO there is in the industry.
So there are couple of questions we are at the last part of the episode, sir.
Good.
And these, आपको जल्दी इनके जवाब देने, maybe 1, 2, 3 sentences or very quick ones.
ठीक है.
What is one thing that puts you off as an investor if you see that in a founder?
Not telling the truth.
Have you seen it multiple times?
I don't know whether it is by design or whether it happens instinctively. Sometimes entrepreneurs can do a lot of window dressing to provide data that is not false, but that suits their narrative.
Give us an example where generally founders do this window dressing, that the data is not false, but they support.
Yeah, I mean, they will pick some period of time in which they have done very well. So they will not show the entire history. That happens all the time. So a company's been around for 6 years. They will show us data for last 3 and then ignore the first 3 so that it seems that they have been growing very rapidly, but they discount the period of product market fit. That happens all the time. So picking narrative for the period that works best for you is an example that one sees very normally. So I think when we find that he is not being truthful, that is most unnerving. Other piece which puts us off is arrogance. We feel that businesses are built by people who are humble, who are willing to acknowledge their mistakes, who know their weaknesses and are willing to surround themselves with stronger people. So when there is arrogant, that is not within our DNA. So we like to work with people who are very grounded. Look at the Infosys founders who have reached heights of a different class, but are still very.
Who is the most truthful founder that you have invested in? There are many, of course, but who's the? अगर आपको बोलते हैं ना truthful founder, तो किसकी दिमाग image में आती है?
Yeah, I think BigBasket founders.
Hari sir.
Hari, Sudhakar, and Vipul. These three founders, you never have to double guess. You will always get the
right picture. Good news or bad news. It is never window dressed. Was there any example which आपको लगा कि यार गजब के सच, मतलब how truthful they are?
Yeah. They, there has been a time, as I was saying, that every company goes through a near death. So there has been a period in their existence when they were not growing as rapidly as we would have expected them to. And they would give us examples where they thought they had made mistakes, rather than blaming it on the market and the environment, without wanting to give you inside information. But I think that is an example of a very truthful founder.
Who is the most humblest founder that you have met?
Humblest, I would say Neeraj at Spinny. He comes from a very humble background. Many years in his life, he couldn't speak in English language. So I think he's building a very high quality company, but is very, very grounded, very connected to his team, goes to all the centers in the country. I think Neeraj would be right up there.
In your life, आपने बहुत सारी scalable build to last institution बनाए sir. What are some 3 fundamental pieces that are required to build a build to last and a scalable business? The core fundamentals.
I think one is you got to play in a very large market. Because अगर आप प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर रहे हो, अगर वही बड़ी नहीं है,
बिजनेस कैसे बड़ा?
तो बिजनेस बड़ा बन ही नहीं सकता. So I think solving, like for example, when we started Daksh, contact centers were $100 billion opportunity. So massive in terms of size it could yield. Or BigBasket is solving for online grocery. Grocery is $1 trillion industry. तो उसका अगर 1% भी you move online,
you're a big player.
You can build a big company. So first would be
big market.
Second would be customer centricity. Because one of the biggest things in online businesses are cost of customer acquisition. So once you have a customer, if you lose him,
it's a big,
it's a leaking bucket, Then you have to acquire that many more. So if you are customer centric, then you get more and more repeat customers. Word of mouth is very strong on the internet because of social media. So I think customer centricity, living by the customer, is the second big driver. And the third one would be culture. Because all these businesses become very large people businesses, though they need technology. Flipkart, for example, now has 2.5 lakh people, including their gig workers. Right. Or BigBasket has 40,000-50,000 people. I think when you have good culture, you don't need supervision, because culture stems from values. And if people have imbibed values, then you don't need to supervise. Values act like a supervisor. So उससे companies can become infinitely scalable.
Right.
Because every person in the organization is thinking like a CEO and not like an employee.
अगर मैं कोई young बच्चा organization बना रहा है, कौन सी 2 actionable step हैं जो उनको करने चाहिए to build culture, and कौन सी ऐसी 2 चीजें हैं जो उनको बिल्कुल भी नहीं करनी चाहिए, actionable points not to build a good culture?
तो एक तो है कि sit down with your core team and draw a list of values. For example, I was telling you
the 7 values.
7 values at Daksh. One value can be live by customer. So उस वैल्यू के अगेंस्ट कैसे लोगों को हायर करना, ट्रेन करना, performance manage karna. That would be a very good example of what we were discussing.
Got it. Tell us one value.
Yeah.
Tell us some values which you believe are common between you and Nandan sir. When you think about Nandan sir, what comes to your mind?
I think Nandan's ability to predict the future and unconstrained thinking would be probably his.
Give us an example of while he was thinking without any constraint.
All his initiatives, whether it is ONDC or whether it is Aadhaar or whether it is UPI, are places where there were no boundaries and there were no playbooks. So making impact at that scale in a democracy where you have to work with government and you have to work with people,
all the stakeholders, private players, everyone.
Yeah, bring them together. So for one human being to be able to do so much is an example of unconstrained thinking and consensus building. Yeah.
What quality of him is, what makes him to do, predict the future and have this ability to bring everyone together? What's the core? How can someone young become a second Nandan? Because I'll definitely ask this question to him as well.
Yeah.
There are insights which people around a person, and you are one of his best friends. So
yeah. I think one is humility, because when you have humility, your listening skills also become very superior. And a lot of these things are about gathering inputs from the world around you, gathering inputs from prospective customers, prospective employees. So humility, and I think a strategic mind and optimism. I think the fact that you can believe that one day you will be able to give an identity to every citizen in the country, it requires tremendous amount of optimism, because there will be so many challenges. So I think optimism, strategic thinking, humility, influencing skills, those are the keywords that I would associate with him.
Tell us one thing, one prediction about future that you have. Because we are entering to a different world, so.
Yeah.
And if you have to, say कि जिस दुनिया में आप जा रहे हो, ये चीज पक्का होगी. What should we need to understand about the future that you think will happen?
You know what internet did to distribution? जैसे कि Flipkart, rather than going to Flipkart store, you get stuff at your home. So internet transformed distribution. I think AI will do the same thing to logic. Yeah. So the way you think will get so merged with AI that different kinds of breakthroughs will happen in the country. Which fields, which industries, all that is work in progress. But internet for distribution, AI for logic.
Got it. What are certain things that you derive pleasure from at this stage of time? जहाँ आपको सच में बहुत happiness होती है?
मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा मज़ा आता है in engaging entrepreneurs on how to scale companies. That, and second thing I enjoy most is doing safari holidays with my family.
What's your favorite destination?
My Kenya, Tanzania, I have done many of these. And Pench in Madhya Pradesh.
Got it. Pramod sir, he recently was in Kenya. And
he's a big safari person also.
Yes. What was the best advice you received at a time when you were, kind of at your lower point? Because, entrepreneurship is lots of troughs and crafts. What was the best advice given to you when you were at your lowest point in life?
One, I don't know whether it's at the lowest point, but one very good advice I got from my ex-boss, Mohan Menon. I used to work in a company called Digital Equipment Corporation. Was to health first. Everything else is secondary. If you don't look after your health, you can't succeed as a professional, you can't be a good parent, etc., etc. So I prioritize health over everything else. Second great advice I got from Mr. Suta was around breaking the company into multiple business units at Daksh. And then third advice I got from my friend Rajiv Kataria. When I was thinking ki ab Daksh bhi ho gaya, Helion mein we have spent time, should I hang up my boots? And he told me ki abhi to you are so young and there is so much to contribute in this world. His words were different. So kind of that helped me start my third innings.
Got it.
Daksh, Helion and Fundamentum. Yeah. So those probably are the top of the line.
On your health point, it's so true because I recently read ki an healthy person want 1,000 things.
Yeah.
An unhealthy person only want one.
Yeah.
Which is health. So got it. What's on your bucket list, sir?
More golf.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of folks that we interview are golf aficionados. So what in the golf is make you fascinate about the sport?
It's very meditative. Once you are on the course, you totally switch off and get immersed in that sport. And you can be in the midst of good friends, lush greens. So the entire setting is very meditative, I would say.
Is this the reason you got this office on the golf course? So, if you have to, last thing, sir, if you have to surround yourself with 5 people, they say you're the sum of 5 people you surround yourself. If you were 22 again, and from your interactions with all the folks that you have met in so many decades, who those 5 people would be, jinke saath you would love to surround yourself with?
Professionally, it's very hard to say because I have now had a career 25 years, 25 years plus. But personally, I think my favorites are my wife, my 2 children, my younger sister, Deepa, and my brother-in-law, Ashish. So these are the 5 that I would pick in my personal life. Professionally, it's very hard to say. There are so many people that have impacted you and you love to be their company.
And what is one thing that you're teaching your kids, teaching your children? And what is one thing that you really want them to learn from you? एक theory of everything होती है ना सब? कि यार बस ये सीख जाओ बाकी सब sorted है. तो क्या चीज़ है? Certain there.
I would say 2 things. One I say share with them is that paint your own canvas. Figure out what your gifts are. Like my gift was turning around businesses or starting new enterprises, and then I turned an entrepreneur. So figure out what your gifts are and then paint your canvas. And the second thing I would tell them is focus on the input. Output will take care of itself. So we didn't set out to build 20,000 people company. We just said that we will want to deliver great customer service day in and day out. Scale was the outcome of that
input
that we gave or we gave expression to. So I would say that don't worry about being the biggest, being the largest, being the wealthiest. Just give in your best foot forward to whatever you pick as your canvas to paint on, which should be in line with your gifts. Because if you're doing something which is in line with your gifts, then you enjoy it. So for example, I'm now 64. I love my profession, so it's not work for me. A lot of people ask me, why aren't you hanging your boots? Because it doesn't feel like work. For me,
It's joy.
Hanging out with entrepreneurs is so much joy that so they should also find something that gives them that intrinsic joy.
Thanks a lot, sir. Really grateful. Any feedback that you would like to give? Anything that you think कि कुछ अच्छे से हो सकता था?
नहीं, amazing. You've done an amazing job.
We have to
very interactive and easy. So that is what I enjoyed about the interview.
अगर इसको देख के अगर कोई 10 बच्चे भी young लोग if they start something big and eventually this is an investment in perpetuity.
Yeah.
This will be on the internet for so long. अगर एक बच्चा भी inspire होता है to do something, then I believe that our job is done.
And you know, when we are talking about ourselves, we learn a lot about ourselves.
What did you learn today about you?
You know, all these things about my journey, about my strengths, about Nandan's strengths. I was reflecting for the first time. I knew it intuitively, but it comes to the fore.